Morning ride. There's been a few things in my life after 30 plus years of riding adventure bikes. Okay, it's been more like almost 40. And a couple of things that I've made some really great decisions that have stuck with me for a long time. And I was going to go over some of those fantastic things. The first thing I'm going to say though is it's always a great assault what you got to take all of these videos with, because whatever the person has is going to be the best thing they know about. The best thing, you know, the best bike is the bike they have, which is a really good methodology to think about. And what is the best motorcycle? It's the motorcycle you own. All right, but that's not what I'm here to discuss. What I'm here to discuss is some equipment things that I've had that are just absolutely fantastic decisions. One of them is all my motorcycles have heated grips. This one has the Oxford heated grips right here, and you can adjust the temperature of those grips to hot as hell or just slightly nice and warm. And that makes such a big difference riding. You ride in cooler weather and your hands aren't getting cold. I can wear lighter gloves. I always wear summer gloves now. I even wear summer gloves in the snow. All right, so that's number one. Bing! Heated grips. All right, what's number two? I mean, there's so many. It's like, this is not in an order of best versus worst or anything like that. But I will say that a good pair of boots goes a long way. And this goes along with the whole thought of, if you have really comfortable gear, you're gonna wear it. If it's uncomfortable in some way, you're not gonna wanna wear it. And it really holds true. So starting with my boots, these are the Alpine Star Toucans, if you can see those. Toucan, Tucson, whatever they are. They're really, really expensive. They're a Gore-Tex boot. That means the liner is Gore-Tex. So the liner breathes a little bit better than some other boots. But it's still a big plastic boot. So I'm not sure how much that Gore-Tex really matters or not, because I've only had as far as this boot in the Gore-Tex boot. I love these boots. They're super, super comfortable. I can do small hikes in them. And I say like short hikes, because they're still a big, tall boot, and they're plastic boots, so they're not real comfortable to be doing like a long hike in. But, you know, I've hiked around a lake in them, and I've wore these all the way up to Alaska, and all the hikes I did in these boots. Even though I had a second pair of shoes, I ended up just using these boots. So now I just bring these boots. I don't bring another pair of shoes because they're not needed. Let's go up this way. So what else do we have here? So the boots are very important. I have two sets of boots. I can't remember what the other, like a TCX or something. They're more of a street boot, but they have a good Vibram bottom, which is great. And that's another thing to think about with boots, is that they would have, for adventure style boots, you want something with a sole. I'm gonna open my helmet. Sound's gonna change a little bit. You want a sole that you can hike in or walk in. So you don't want that smooth bottom street bike sole. You want something that's going to protect your feet. All right, so that's boots. All right, now that we've talked about boots, in your boots, you're going to need a good pair of socks. And having a good pair of socks, the merino wool socks are just amazing because they don't stink. They hold some of that moisture, again, away from your skin. Going with the Gore-Tex, I think that's helping. Note here with the Gore-Tex is just a branding thing. So a breathable liner. Let's just say breathable liner. So you get these non-Gore-Tex, probably going to be the same thing. Anyways, so moving up from there, I have gone to enduro pants for my adventure rides because they are easy to move in. They're heavy duty, and the places need to be heavy duty. They have no armor in them, so I wear armor on my skin. So I've got air flight armor or something. That's kind of an old brand. So it's just a really form-fitting armor around my knees and my elbows, and that's what I wear there. And then I wear an enduro jacket, and I can layer up underneath all of that stuff. That really helps. I did talk a little bit about summer gloves. So these are Icon gloves. I don't know what their D30 armor in them, or whatever. They are, I think that's just the knuckle. They are super comfortable. They have a little stitch here that helps for using like your cell phone or something like that. I just love the lightweight gloves. They have a good solid leather skin for the palms, so there is some abrasion resistance if you go down on the street or in the dirt. You'll notice here with my Oxford gloves, I have them upside down, so they're actually on the opposite sides. I run my wires up, and the reason I do this, I'm not suggesting this for everybody because it sort of hits your knuckles here, and you can move the throttle a little bit if you're not knowing what's going on, to go to reach up and you turn the throttle. That doesn't happen to me, but I mean, I'm just saying that it could. They tell you to run it underneath. I don't run it underneath because I had sticks come through, branches come through and grab onto this cable, so now the cable runs up and above. It doesn't hit anything, and that's the way I run them. We should talk about one of the greatest decisions. So those are great decisions. It makes it light, comfortable to ride. I had all the big adventure gear with all the armor, 3 layers of protection, waterproofing, all that kind of stuff, and I tell you, just hated wearing it. And in the summer, I would just bake and boil, so I would want to not wear it. And so this stuff I just wear all the time. I wear it around camp. I'm always wearing it. Have big vents underneath the arms here so I can unzip it, get some ventilation going. And then here's the next thing. I don't care what kind of helmet you're wearing. Well, I do wear a safe helmet, but if you could see in the mirror here, let me put my screen down. So this screen is a transitions lens, so it changes color when it gets sunny out, and then when you go into the forest, it lightens back up. It does take a little bit to transition, but man, I absolutely love this. I don't want to ride without it. I don't have one of these on my street bike helmet, so I am probably going to change out my street bike helmet, which I hate to say it because they don't make one for it, so I'd have to change out the helmet, which is a bummer because I love that helmet. But the transition lens is a game changer. It just is so awesome. They're very expensive. Let's get on to expensive. My motorcycle. If some of you know me, I had a dealership for a while, so I've had lots and lots and lots of motorcycles. Prior to this motorcycle here, I was riding a KTM 1090 Adventure R. Prior to that, I had the 1190 Adventure R. Prior to that, I had the 1290 Adventure R. Prior to that, I was riding a BMW R1200 R1200 GS Adventure. I've had the GS as well. I have had KTM 990, 950, 690. I had a Husqvarna 701. I have had a KLR 650. I mean, the list goes on and on, all the way back down to the first KLR 650 in 1989 was probably one of my first moves into sort of the adventure. They didn't call them adventure bikes back then, but it was a dual sport, big, heavy dual sport. It was awesome. Lots of adventures on that thing. I have come a long ways to get to a rally style motorcycle, and it is not a cheap motorcycle by any means. So we look at the CRF Rally motorcycles. They've got the 250 and the 300 Rally. This is the 250. There's been lots and lots of changes to this bike to make it what I wanted. Cost was not sort of a thing I was concerned about. I sold an expensive motorcycle. I probably put every dollar of that into this motorcycle, which originates as a pretty inexpensive motorcycle at about, $5,500 or $6,000, something like that. But once you've added all the things to it, this is right up there with the rest of them. It gets up, you're going to put probably another $3,000 into this. So 6, 7, 8, 9, that's $9,000 motorcycle. Sounds really steep, but what it is with Hondas, a couple of the Hondas, the Honda Rally and so the XL650, is the potential of the motorcycle. They build the forks, so there's all this potential in them, right? So that's the way I'm looking at these motorcycles, potential. So these forks are amazing. Lots and lots of travel, over 11 inches of travel in these. So with the right springs in them, the right weight oil in them, you have the correct valving, you have the correct spring rate, and you've got all of that travel to deal with. It makes it amazing. So to say these are not adjustable is that they don't have adjusters. You can adjust and change these forks the way you want to. So I've made these forks. They've got Racetech spring in one fork. It's got a Honda spring in the other fork. It has 15 weight oil rather than the 5 weight or 2 weight that comes in these. It has a bit more volume of oil, so that reduces the amount of air in the shock. So that initial part of the squat of the shock is the air that's in the shock. So if you reduce a little bit of that, and we're talking little tiny bits, not a lot, you don't want to add so much volume that you make the fork lock. So or even vapor lock or anything like that, right? So you're just adding a little bit. So I can go into details on that on another video, but I think I actually have a video that talks about that. So really adding a spring to this, changing the fork viscosity of the oil is in a sense changing the valving. You don't need to go buy new valves. You just need to change the viscosity of the oil and you upgrade your valves. These forks work absolutely amazing. I take huge hits with these things off-road, some big G-outs, and I have not bottomed these things out. I'm sure I could over a massive jump, but or hit a ditch. I'd probably be at hurt. Anyways, the rear of the bike has a little stock OEM shock in it that you can't, there's nothing you could do to, I mean, you could probably rebuild it. So you're stuck with replacing the rear shock. You've got the potential, again, in the rear end to make this thing amazing. So it's got enough travel potential. It has the right type of linkage. It just needs a new shock. I decided to put the Olin shock in here, and the Olin shock is very adjustable, and it has adjusters. The problem with Olin's is it comes with a light spring, and so I haven't put the heavy duty spring in it. The spring is still too short, so they don't put a long enough spring on it. Now, I don't want to go into a ton of detail, but here's the spring, right? This yellow spring right here, and it's the right weight spring. It's just a little too short. So what you have to do is you have to run the adjuster on the top of the spring down, which preloads the spring to bring the back of the motorcycle up. The reason they did that is because the front of this motorcycle, OEM, it sits really low in the suspension travel. So if they were to put the right size spring on this, the bike would sit tilted to the front. So it's not that big a deal. You just really have to adjust this spring ring down to preload the spring. That doesn't change the rate, so the spring rate is still correct. Preloading it doesn't do anything to the spring or the spring rate. It just is pushing down on the spring to preload how much load's going to be on there. So the spring is working really well for me. It's not a problem. It's just how much I had to adjust it is pretty severe. The spring rates and the valving is great. You can adjust it however you want it. You can make it way too stiff. You can make it too much compression dampening, too much rebound dampening, too little. So it's really got all the adjustment necessary. It makes the front and the back work really well. Talking about these shocks and the way they're set up, these are set up absolutely perfect for a 200-pound person. 3 inches of not static sag, but it's rider sag. So when I get on the bike, it compresses the suspension 3 inches. And when you start looking at the ratios and all of that, that is absolutely perfect. All right, let's move on from that. Love that stuff. The exhaust, this came with the bike. It's the Yoshimura exhaust. It sounds fantastic. I'm not sure I would have bought it, only because, you know, it's expensive, but you might as well have it all, right? So that's a full Yoshimura system. Putting in a full Yoshimura system, you also need to put in the spark arrestor. It does have one in this one, which is great. With that, one thing I did want to add was to remap the fueling. It's a piggyback system. It's the EKJ, I think it's called EKJ, fuel controller, and you can adjust how much fuel at what RPM you're adding to the base map of the motorcycle. So you can add a bit more fuel at different levels. And with the exhaust on there, your flowing a bit more air. And then I modified the air box and opened it up a little bit so that I would have more air coming in. And with that, I had to adjust those settings up a bit so that the fuel ratios were correct. And what do I get out of that? I get a little bit more throttle response, a little bit better throttle response. It winds out quite a bit further, so I can actually, the highway speeds are no problem, or before you'd be in 5th gear, I can run 6th gear and I can run a lot faster for those highway speeds. It's, you know, off the line, it's I think still probably about the same. It might be a little better. It's really hard to know unless you know, could do a back-to-back and time it or something, but overall, I'm really happy with the EKJ piggyback system for the fuel controller. That's awesome. Let's talk about 2 things that just had to be done. So that's why I'm not doing this in any order, but we talk about the clutch on this. I'm just looking at the little clutch arm here, but the clutch on these things has a judder spring. It's a really mild clutch, so it's very soft, engaging clutch. So I replaced the clutch, took the judder springs out, so I've used was it EBC, something like that, clutch kit for this that removes the judder springs, adds another plate, and adds heavier springs, so you have a lot firmer engagement of the clutch. For me, that's a game changer. When the clutch doesn't, you know, the old clutch would get hot and it would start slipping and it's hard to engage over obstacles, and you just felt like the bike didn't have power, where now it's immediate, just like it should be. I think they put that in there for, it helps you not stall the motorcycle for a beginner. That's great. Honda seems to do it on almost all their motorcycles, so it's a decision to try and help stalling and things like that and make the bike a little bit more friendly. I love it without it. That's you know, take it or lose. I just thought that's, I mean, that was a game changer for me. Skid plate. This is the B&B off-road skid plate. I believe this comes from Australia. You need to order these directly from them. Nobody ships them anymore. You used to be able to ship these. It is a skid plate that looks like the original plastic skid plate. It's taken some hits and it has not dented or anything. It really holds up well. I'm not a big fan of the massive skid plates. This already has a frame underneath it. So, I mean, if it takes a hit this way, it's compressing against the frame anyways. But it does protect the bottom of the motorcycle. It protects the sump, anything going up into it, and rocks hitting it from the front wheel. That's awesome. Moving up on some of the necessaries, having good hand protection. So if you hit a branch, hit a tree, hit something like that, you drop the motorcycle. These will save your levers. These will save your hands. These are the Tusk. I absolutely love these Tusk handguards. They're my favorite handguards of all of them. I mean, at any price. They have a protector out here so it's not just aluminum on the outside, so that you can replace these if they get scratched up. These are replaceable and pretty cheap, and then the main body is aluminum, and the part that I really love is that the aluminum body around the handlebar are soft edges, so most of them have really harsh edges that you can even cut yourself on them. I mean, if you hit something on this is not so bad. I did bar risers. These are the Pro Taper bar risers. I needed the bars up slightly. These brought them up and allowed me to put on larger diameter bars. These are Tusk bars. I usually use Pro Taper. I wanted to try the Tusk. These are great. Don't notice anything different about them from Pro Taper. You can't go too far forward with these because if you watch up here, we get really, really, really close to the windscreen. So I originally wanted to move forward. Forward's not a great idea on this bike because it'll hit the windscreen. Love the windscreen. Love the lights. It's got great lighting. It's got great wind protection. I did replace the mirrors. So these mirrors are the double take mirrors. I know they've redesigned these since, but I absolutely love these. You can adjust them quite easily. If they get hit, they move out of the way. Fantastic. I also run a Trailtech Voyager Pro GPS. Fantastic for following tracks, loading tracks. Not good at all for street navigation. So I have 2 RAM mounts here. One at the top. I run my phone on this top one. And this one right here is for capturing drone footage. And I can mount my drone controller to the handlebars right here. What else do we have? I upgraded the sprockets and chain. So I wanted to have fresh chain and sprocket. The chain is a pretty mild chain that comes on these bikes, so I upgraded to a heavier duty chain. It's an X-ring chain. Also one with a master link. I never usually put master links on there. For some reason I decided to do it, so I had to pick up a couple of extra master links in case I do something with that. Then tires. Oh, tires. Let's talk about Colts. No, whatever tires you like are great. These are, what are these? These are, I always want to say Tractionator, but they're Motaz Ralls, so R-A-L-L-Z. The Ralls are a bit aggressive. They work awesome off-road, and they work fine on-road. I think they're a little bit too aggressive for a adventure bike in this size. And different sizes will change the style of the tire completely. So in these, it's a little aggressive. It's a little more than necessary. I mean, I love it. And off-road, it's absolutely fantastic. I got about 5,000 miles on these right now. So that's a nice thing about an underpowered bike. Tires last a long time. And the front is the same one. It is the Motaz Ralls. And again, it is probably more aggressive than needed. It doesn't look all that aggressive, but I will tell you that the difference between, say, this tire and something like a TKC 80, the TKC 80 just handles everything a lot nicer. It still works really well off-road, and it handles the street pretty well. This tire, if it kept inflated, is a little wonky off-road, which is kind of funny because on-road it's just fine, but say at 35 psi on off-road, the bike seems to want to twitch back and forth, so you got to run that pressure down a bit. The TKC doesn't seem to do that, so it's a little bit more finicky of a tire. I probably wouldn't buy this tire again for the front, but it works well, and it works, you know, if it's aired down, it works well off-road. But that's kind of the funny thing, is it doesn't work as well off-road as you would expect. And I end up running pretty high pressure because if you're going on-road, off-road, on-road, off-road, you don't want to have to keep trying to inflate and deflate your tires. You could probably just run 25 and it'd be okay. Around 20, I think the tire starts to work pretty well. 15, it works great. But 15's getting to be a little too low pressure for the street. So that is that. I've got a rack on the back of this bike. I carry very little luggage, so I put a small rack on the back of this. This looks like the OEM Honda one. I don't know if it is or not. I don't even remember where this one came from, but they're pretty cheap. The rack, I just throw a duffel bag on here, strap it down, and that's it. And then I wear a backpack with the rest of my gear. I weigh in my gear, weighs in my camping gear for, say, a 9-day trip was just under, right around 30 pounds. So split between my backpack and my riding gear. So one thing I should say, these bikes, the kickstand, I'm looking down at the kickstand going, yes, the kickstand. I had to extend my kickstand just about, I believe it was, I'm not sure if it was about an inch. I can't remember the exact measurement, but it was about an inch extension for the kickstand, because when the bike is setting this high, it would just tip over. It was just way too short. Now, funny, if you have one of these, you're probably thinking the kickstand's too long, because these things OEM, when you have it on the kickstand, if you have to kind of pull it over for it to be tall enough not to tip over the other way because of the kickstand. So it's probably an inch too long in the OEM setting and an inch too short in the proper setting. That shows you how much adjustability in this suspension there is. Anyways, that for now is all I can think of. We should talk about gas mileage and things like that. Why did I choose this bike? All those kind of things. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. All right, let's talk about why would I choose a 250? Holy smokes, Chris, you've had a lot of motorcycles. What made you choose to put a bunch of money into a 250? Well, it's the rally bike that I wanted. And the horsepower and all of that mattered a lot less to me than the end result of what that bike was going to be like. So I built one of these up a few years ago, absolutely loved it. It was part of my shop, one of my shop builds, so it was one that I would sell. It sold before I was done with the project. The person just called and said, I'm buying that, tell me when it's done. And I'm like, okay. And then I called him and told him it was going to be done in a week, and he said, okay, I'll come pick it up. And I forgot, we didn't even talk about price. So when he got there, it's just like, well, what do you got into it? And I'll give you another, you know, I think it was 500 or 1,000 bucks over what I had into the bike, which was super nice. Worked out really well. But that brings me back to having all these different motorcycles. I wanted two things. I wanted a lot more than that. I wanted two things that were major. One of them was reliability, and I wanted to reduce the weight. And those were beyond all the things I want in a motorcycle. So if I could get everything I wanted as far as the way the bike would ride, some wind protection, suspension, and I could get reliability and the weight that I wanted. So I wanted a bike that was around 300 pounds. I was coming off a bike that weighed about 500 pounds. And one of the key things is not to bring too much stuff, because you're just gonna then have a motorcycle. It's like, that's gonna weigh even more, right? So you gotta count all your gear and stuff. So I got cutting all the gear back. I did that on my KTM, and I got down to where I was like, okay, I can go 30 pounds, all my gear, and I can travel for as long as I want. Just need to stop for food every, say, 5 days. And so I'm like, okay, so now I don't need as big a bike to carry so much stuff. And I started going, that opens up some options. But then I need to be able to have all the suspension I want. I want to be able to have the off-road ability, all those things that you really want in a motorcycle to make it that unicorn sort of bike for yourself. And for me, it wasn't the long distance travel. I could deal with traveling on a little bit less comfort to make sure that my off-roading time doing my adventures was going to be easier. I'm not a young guy, so let's talk about that a little bit. When you get a little older, you got to be worried about trying to pick up a 500-pound motorcycle when it's laying downhill off the trail and you have a bad back and a bad neck. I'm always worried about it. It didn't happen to me, but I always got worried about it after I would do a trip. I said, man, you know, I was on this trip, it was pretty gnarly, and I started talking about all that, and I go, oh my God, if I would have crashed 200 miles away from anything, I'd have been done. And that gets you into reliability. You also want reliability because you don't want to break down a few hundred miles away from anybody. Now, I have done that. Some bikes aren't quite as reliable, and I have broken down quite far out in the wilderness. Luckily, I had somebody with me, and I rode on the back of their motorcycle that was only set up for one person for probably 200 miles, maybe a little more. It was pretty uncomfortable. Anyway, so Honda reliability, this thing's just gonna go, 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 go. It's light, about 300 pounds. It's give or take, I mean, it's maybe 305 pounds. I've taken a lot of stuff off it, but I've added a few things too, and I really haven't put it on a scale, so there you go. I know it's not 500, how about that? Now, I do have to travel to get to the places I go, and so that's why I wanted some wind protection. I just rode 300 miles for a adventure, 300 miles on the highway just to get there, and it was awesome. I had no issues whatsoever. I was riding by myself. I wasn't in a big hurry, but I could keep up with traffic anywhere I was going, and never had an issue. And I was averaging, so for the 300 miles I was averaging 70 miles an hour for the trip, so a little over and a little under for different sections. My average fuel consumption was 60 miles per gallon. That's pretty good, you know, that's decent. I slowed that down to 65, and my fuel consumption went down dramatically. So I could get 70 miles per gallon, and all of a sudden we're over that 200 mile mark on the stock fuel tank. And off-road, this thing does even better. Somewhere between 70 and 80 miles per gallon, depending on where, the altitude, the type of terrain. And so I am getting that magical 220 miles per tank full, which is absolutely fantastic. And this thing handles better on my adventure trips than any of the motorcycles I've had before. Any of them. It is better off-road than the KTM 690. It's better off-road than the KTM or the Husqvarna 701. It's better off-road than the BMWs, than my larger KTMs. It's just better. There's not so much power you're worried about traction control, but there's enough. You can pull wheelies on this bike. You can, do what you want to do on this bike. It's got plenty of power, and it's a 250cc motorcycle. It makes it absolutely beautiful. What do I miss? I miss nothing, because when I bought this, I also bought when I bought this, I also bought, boom, I bought a Goldwing. I bought a Goldwing F6B. And I figured if I am going on long distance adventures on the road, I take my Goldwing. Are you kidding me? That thing is awesome. That's got cruise control. that has it all. It really, and comfort is absolutely awesome. So those are the big road trips. Get out on the Goldwing. When I want to go do adventures, my goal is to get off-road. I might have to travel a long ways to get there, but the main focus is to be off-road and do that in the most comfort style that I can. And this has been the ultimate bike. The potential of these bikes, buying them off the showroom floor, is just awesome. You're gonna spend money, so there's no way to call this a cheap motorcycle. But it is absolutely fantastic. I put 5,000 miles on this. Ooh, have I put more? Well, just over 5,000 miles on this since I got it. And I will tell you that the majority of that has been on the highway, because I really, when I first got this, I kept the KTM and I was testing out this bike to see, can I live with it? And so I rode on the highway. I rode down Highway 5, coming back from like LA. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, and coming back from LA, I will tell you, there's the one downside if you're traveling with a bunch of people, is that on Highway 5 there's a big wind area, and we had super strong winds. I was alone, so it wasn't a big deal. And I found that I had to just ride in with the truckers. So I was had to ride 65 miles an hour, and I had to stick in with the truckers because I couldn't go 70, 75. And that was like, okay, I was like, am I gonna get really tired of this? And until I decided just to tuck in, and not tuck, but I mean just stay with that speed of traffic, I was like, oh, this is gonna get tiring. But as soon as I decided to do that, it was absolutely awesome. No problem for the rest of the way home. You just can't be in a bigger hurry. So I'm saying, if you're with people that are on sport bikes or, leader adventure bikes, they're going to be cruising at 85, 90 miles an hour going, where are you? Because the wind will slow you down. I haven't had any problems anywhere. Always keeps up with traffic. It's always just fine. I've ridden with other folks, and I'll find that, we'll go up into the mountains or something, and it's like a 70, or well, I guess they're about 55 to 60 mile an hour zones, but where people are driving 80 and they're just taking off, they're driving 80 miles an hour, and I can't ride 80 miles an hour up through the hills. So that's fine with me. They can go. They can get the tickets too. But this keeps me down around the 65, 70 mark. If I ride 65, I get really great fuel economy, and that's just awesome. So that's sort of your, if you want to call it a downside. For me, it's not a downside, because I'm on adventures. I'm not time, you know, I'm not, if I want to go fast and go get the Goldwing, that'll go 100 miles an hour all day, who cares? But on this bike, I want to get to the adventure place, and once I've gotten there, I am telling you, there is no bike that's been better. It has been absolutely awesome. So what are the other bikes? Do we even talk about that? I mean, I think you guys all know. I mean, you can buy a KTM 500, you can go buy the CRF250 Rally. You could buy, so there's this KTM 690, that has Sparta 701. There's a couple other bikes coming out. The Cove 450. Hey, you might have the bike right there. That was not available at the time of this build, and I think it's just becoming available now. But that Cove 450 could be a potential. I just don't know about reliability. So the rest of it's kind of built just like this. I mean, as far as it's like built like a rally bike, and you want that extra wind protection around your legs. You want a little bit off your chest. I just know here I have that reliability, and all the other bikes I mentioned, you were going to sacrifice reliability. The oil change interval is insane on these bikes. I don't go by them anyways, but I want a bike where I can go, I mean, if I had to go 7,000 miles between oil changes, like riding to Alaska, I'd like to be able to do that. I at least want to be able to go 3,000 to 5,000 miles between oil changes. On this bike, it's somewhere between 10 and 12,000 miles I ask for an oil change. I change every 3. If I'm in a place to do it, I'll try every 3,000 miles. But there's no reason not to go 5,000 or 7,000. You could do it. I mean, I know people that wait 10, but you're not going to do that on any of those other bikes. I mean, the CRF450, I think every 500 miles or something, you need to change the oil. And I mean, I would have to carry another 50 pounds of stuff with me on my trips. It's insane. No way. Or I'd just stop and change my oil somewhere, and somebody say, oh yeah, well, you can go a lot farther than that. You could double that, like 1,000 miles. Great. I'd have to change my oil 3 times on the last trip I just did. I'm like, oh my God. No. So, so that doesn't work. Back to reliability. I just want to be able to have a bike that is massive reliable, and it kind of goes with that Goldwing too. Reliability, reliability, reliability. This has been a complete rant. I hope there's some information here that's helpful. If you have some questions about the CRF build, the Rally build, just hit me up, ask me the questions where I got stuff. I've got like 3 skid plates for this thing because I tried out a bunch. I think this one's the best. It's not the cheapest, it's actually really expensive, but it's definitely the best. There are some much cheaper ones. I think for $100 you can pick one up. But yeah, hit me up, let me know. If you got any questions, I'll try and answer them. Why did I choose 250 over 300? It was price. They're both just fine. Either one, doesn't matter. I think that the 250's got a bit more torque. The 300 has a bit more power, and it's just a little bit more refined maybe of a motor. It's more of a street motor in a sense, but very similar. I wouldn't, either way, totally fine. I've got opinions on the KLX 250 and 300. I've had those too, and they have better suspension to start out with, but you still have to do all the upgrades anyways, so it doesn't really matter. This has a bit more to work with, so that's why I chose this. And it's a rally, so you get all the fairings, and that's kind of probably the main reason. Anyways, guys, from me to you, I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.